Hey, welcome into the Fearless Investor Podcast. You're listening to me, Kyle Stanley. We have Tyler Kuhn on this episode today. Tyler is with Savvy Real Estate. They're in the southeast portion of the U.S., kind of in the Carolinas and Kentucky. And one of the things that you're going to hear from him today is really about how they're building a really great business and helping you as well if you're looking for the best type of property to go buy and you're like, hey, I don't know where to start and I don't live in the area. I just have a little bit of money and I want to go and make sure I'm making the right purchase, especially with everyone talking about lower occupancy and lower rates these days. I don't want to make a mistake. That is exactly what you're going to get from Tyler today. That's what they're great at. And while a lot of people in other areas are talking about this Airbnbust, Tyler is over here like, hey, we're having the best rates and the best occupancy we've ever had. And this is no surprise because he'll even talk about it. AirDNA came out with a report recently about how demand is up. Even though listings are up, the demand is outweighing the listings. But you have to realize that's a US average. So some markets are getting highly impacted and some are getting even higher rates and higher occupancy. And that's where Tyler is at. And that's where you can be as well if this is something that you decide is something that you want to take advantage of with Tyler over at Savvy Real Estate. So without further ado, let's get to it with Tyler Kuhn. All right, guys, welcome in. We have Tyler Kuhn out of North Carolina, and he's also in Savvy Real Estate. We're going to be talking today about how to find and buy a top producing property for your short-term rental portfolio. So Tyler, really excited to talk to you today, man. And thanks for joining.
Yeah, Kyle, the Fearless Investor. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
You make it sound like such a big deal, but not quite. Thank you so much. So Tyler, you're not just helping people to buy houses. You have an awesome company, and we'll get into that in a little bit. You're also doing the dang thing, and you have a lot of properties under management. So of course, got to start with my favorite question. What's your craziest, wildest, most interesting Airbnb story?
Yeah, so I think it probably comes from a different angle than most people where they might talk about the guests. In my property management company, actually, the last person that we fired, we found out a 21-year-old girl, really, really calm and sweet demeanor, really, really nice girl. And we found out she was actually like, I hope none of my management clients are on this, actually. I didn't think about this beforehand. But we found out she was sleeping in some of the properties. And the way that we found out was one of our cleaners showed up to her and her boyfriend naked in the hot tub.
Oh, no.
Craziest story. She was fired immediately, of course. I mean, we had no idea. So yeah, that's.
Oh my gosh. That's kind of hilarious.
Yeah. Really crossing my fingers that none of my clients are on this video right now.
Even if they are, there's a lot worse things that could happen, right?
Yeah, that's true. At least it was my employee, not someone random, because I've heard,
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. Cool. Well, hey, and guys, right now we're going live in our STR Six Figure Formula Facebook group. You guys start posting your questions right now. We will get to them at the end. Q&A with Tyler after we're done with the interview and the podcast. For those of you that are listening to the recording of this on a podcast or YouTube channel, if you have not already, go check out fearlesskyle.com/6FF to have access to our podcast guests, just like Tyler, and be able to ask any and every question that we leave time for Q&A at the end. So Tyler, let's go ahead and jump into it, man. You have a really impressive portfolio and you're doing a lot of really cool things, but what really, let's back it up just for a minute here. What led you into short-term rentals? What were you doing before?
Yeah. So like any real estate agent, I started out just kind of trying to help anybody and everybody I could, right? Just get any type of client that I possibly can and, make a living. And that was fine. And I did really have a love of working with specifically first-time home buyers that were having trouble finding houses. I really, really enjoyed that part of the business. But of course, does that pay the bills, right? Does that lead you to live the lifestyle that you really, truly want to live? Not so much. So I ended up meeting this doctor from Myrtle Beach who ended up buying 8 properties from me, all short-term rentals. And this is before I had niched down into short-term rentals. Today, it's all I do. And I found that I really, really enjoyed the process. I wasn't beating the streets and driving around and doing, 40, 50 showings a week. I could be in my office. It's funny. I don't know if any of you guys have ever, Kyle, if you've ever heard of the Culture Index, but there's this cool tool out there. It's like a personality test. It tells you your traits. And the first line of mine specifically says this person prefers data over people. So when it comes to selling short-term rentals, like it just really, really works for me because I love to dive into the data. I love to help investors make data-backed decisions. So after working with that client and buying 8 short-term rentals, I said, I love this. Like, there's nothing I'd rather do. I saw the wealth that he was creating for himself, his family, his kids, his future. He was going to be able to get out of working 80 hours a week as a robotic surgeon with what I was helping him do, which I was also really enjoying. So I found that I could add value to his life and it was adding value to mine as well. So I love a good win-win situation, right?
Yeah.
So at that time, I was running a team with an old business partner of mine. And I walked into his office and I said, I think we should do this full time. I think we should turn away any and all other clients, which was a crazy thought, right? Like, we're talking about 1 or 2% of the market, right? In terms of vacation rental buyers.
Right.
I said, let's turn away 98% of the market. Let's do this. And he said, you're crazy. We will never make any money. If we go into recession, you're going to lose your ass. And I said, I'm just dedicated to this, man. So we parted ways very amicably. I said, I think it's going to work. He said, I don't think it's going to. So, we parted ways as friends. And since then, I was able to, in 12 months, just doing short-term rentals for myself and my clients, just as a solo agent, able to do 50 million in sales and put over $1 million in commission in the bank, right? And so it was just incredible. So I totally proved my old business partner wrong, which is okay. And yeah, it's just been really, really successful for me and for my clients as well. All the time. It's interesting. I had a client a couple weeks ago and we did the inspection. And so what I do is anytime we get an inspection report back, I call my client, we go through line by line, look at every single item. Does the seller need to fix it? Is it something we can handle? What might the cost or risks associated with that repair or defect of the house be? And by the end of it, she goes, Tyler, I just want to thank you so much because and this is a multi-purchaser. She's a multi-investor. Okay. And she says, no agent has ever even gone through the inspection report with me. I thought that was just standard practice, right? And so, wow. That really meant a lot to me personally, that things that I do that I just consider run of the mill, that are my standard, seem to be above and beyond what the normal real estate standard is out there. And for me, I love if I can elevate the experience in any way, right? So whether that's on real estate sales or property management, we've done furnishing clients' houses. We just love to elevate the experience and do things at a higher level, provide more service, provide better service, and anything we can do to just make the client's life a little bit easier. I find that the value for me follows after that. So the more I put out, the more I get back.
Right. That abundance mindset, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. There's so much to unpack there, but I want to ask a clarifying question. So 12 months, $50 million worth of sales, but you also started a management company after that as well. How many properties is your management company currently managing?
Yeah, so today we have 50 properties that we manage. And basically what we found was that in the space, in our local space here in Western North Carolina, the management companies were running still like it was the 1980s. And I had my own portfolio. My business partner at the time had his own portfolio. We were managing them, automating them with all the processes that you can do these days to automate things and have dynamic pricing. And, basically you're tech enabled, right? And you're using the current tools on the market. And we found that the local property managers weren't doing that. They're literally taking direct bookings over the phone and processing credit cards. And I'm like, there's a better way. There must be a better way. Right. And so we said, well, we'll do this for people. Kind of started out more as a hobby, and it just grew from there. And so today we manage 50 properties for other clients, and we're hoping to grow from there. We got an offer from Vacasa to buy the management company about 6 months ago for $1 million.
Nice. That's amazing, man. And you also have your own, don't you?
Yeah. So I've got 8 short-term rentals of my own as well.
That's great. All right. So there's a reason I asked this question because you made a decision. It sounded like, how long ago was that when you went to your business partner at the time?
That was last year.
That was last year. You went to your business partner at the time last year. You saw a need, but like you said, 1% to 2% of the market. You niche down. There had to be some fear knowing that you were taking 98 to 99% of potential buyers away. Like, what was convicting you so much? And also, what were some of the fears that you had in making that decision?
Yeah, so I definitely live by the motto of fail forward, right?
Nice.
And I have ever since I was 18, I've been an entrepreneur. I was never on a W-2. Never one time in my life did I have a W-2 job or a boss. And I failed at many of the businesses that I was creating. And so I got into real estate to do something that would last longer, to create a better legacy. And for me, there was definitely fear associated with it. I don't know if it's my personality traits or whatever, but I'm the kind of person that I feel like I could do anything, right? Like, I feel like if I just had Google, I could learn how to be my client who is a robotic surgeon, right? Like, I can teach myself. I think the world is so interesting nowadays because you can teach yourself anything. The amount of knowledge out there is literally limitless. You can learn how to do anything all on your own. And so was there a little fear? Yes, I think probably, but there is in any business, I think. But I'm not afraid of failing because I've done it so many times and I came back. I was like a phoenix reborn, out of the ashes. I've continuously reinvented myself and done new. And every time it was always one step better or greater than the last time. So if I fail in this one, I'm excited for that because what's next? Like what's after that then? It'll be even better, So I'm like, I'm ready to fail. I'm never scared to fail.
That's awesome, man. What a great attitude to have too. So the thing about it too, that like I see in this is, man, you've created two multi-million-dollar businesses. You got the one that you're actually helping people to buy real estate and did over $50 million in sales once you made that decision. And now you've got over 50 properties in just 1 year as a management company. That's a lot of things going on, a lot of moving parts. I'm assuming your team is helping out big time. What do your teams look like in both of those businesses?
Yeah. So when I first made the decision to niche down into short-term rentals, my business partner and I parted ways. I hired my best friend of 15 years as my assistant. And so we did probably about $40 million of sales with her. And then she moved on to other things about 2 months ago. And so I said, okay, I've learned all the lessons from working with my friend and what I did right and what I did wrong. So I went out and I doubled down. I hired 2 assistants. Nice. And then on the property. So today it's me and 2 assistants as a solo agent in Western North Carolina. And then on the property management side, earlier this year, it was really interesting going through the process of getting a valuation from Vacasa and an offer letter. We have an LOI from Vacasa for $1 million. But that process was really interesting because from the beginning, I told them, I'm not ready to sell today. And even if you offer me $1 million, $1 million for me isn't going to be life-changing. I'll just spend it. I'll just, go on a lot of vacations and it'll be gone in a year. I said, so I'm probably not going to sell to you, but they still wanted to go through the process with me, which I thought was awesome. And I learned so much. One thing by the end of that I learned was that they never asked me about expenses. They don't care about profit at all. So by the end of that, I said, Jared, so you're telling me that I don't need to make any money in my property management company for you to buy it. If I just keep ramping up the number of units that I manage, you'll just buy it based on a multiple of those units, right?
Interesting.
And he goes, yeah. We, as you saw, we never asked you about your expenses. We don't care what they are. We don't care if you're even running at a loss. So with that, at that point, I said, oh, great, that's awesome. So I hired a very expensive general manager, pay him about $120,000 a year. So I don't have to deal with it anymore. Right. So he runs the day-to-day now. And then we hired additional team members and then we hired a sales staff to just go pour the gasoline on the fire. we went a little bit too fast and things got a little bit messy. July, as anybody who's done vacation rentals knows, is just a crazy month, nearly booked out in occupancy almost all the time. And so spread over 50 properties, were like left and right putting out fires. And so we've now focused to go back to quality a little bit. I went a little too crazy with quantity. And so we're back on quality now, revisiting what we can do to elevate the guest experience and the owner experience. But today I'm not making any money on the property management company, and I don't care to, because at the end of the day, if I can sell it for 10, 20 million later on, that's a lot more attractive to me than making 10 or 20,000 bucks a month in profit today.
That's really interesting. I know that's not really where we thought we were going to go with this, but I'm now very intrigued by the fact that Vacasa they don't care about your net profits. All they care about is how many properties you have and what are those properties doing, essentially based in terms of gross income. Did they ever tell you like why? Is it just because they're going to remove all your systems and adopt their own, and so they know what they're going to make? Or did they give you any insight as to why they look at it that way?
So if you look at Vacasa, they went public last year, and like any publicly traded company, they're okay running at a loss as long as their metrics are improving, right? And it's so funny, I think that profit isn't really a metric that most public companies, or at least startup public companies, have to abide by. I don't even know, has Uber even made any money to date? Like, I don't know. The last time I looked into it, they were still running negative every month over and over and over. And so, no, they don't really care about profitability as much as they care about building their portfolio. I think what they think is if they can continue to knock out all their competitors. So here's what's really interesting, and here's what I truly want to do with my property management company, which is called Bright Host. Vacasa, normally you can get an acquisition at somewhere between 25 and 35,000 bucks a contract.
Okay.
From a big property manager, from a national Walmart property manager, right? And so what's so interesting though is that Vacasa, when they acquired Turnkey VR, they acquired them at $135,000 a contract. Why is that such a big difference? It was because they were their biggest competitor. They acquired 7,000 properties. And so the $500 million acquisition, right, for Turnkey VR, but they were incredibly happy, right? And so my thought is, okay, well, how can I get so big that somebody wants to knock me out so badly that they'll pay 5 times what they would any other way? So that's the question we're trying to answer today, is can we get that big?
That's good, man. All right. I want to go back to one thing you said when you were giving us your story. Data over people was really interesting to me. But mainly just because what we're talking about today is how to find a top producing property on Airbnb. And most of that has to do with data. So what does your data process look like? And what are some of the key metrics that you're looking for when you're analyzing a property?
Yeah. So nowadays, I think if you go into any data analytics software, one, you have to remember that data can be manipulated. And if there are anomalies, if there is a reason for the data to be skewed, you have to really pay attention to that. Because if you're going to rely on data to make your investments, then you need to make sure that the data is reliable, right? And that's what so many people, I think, are making a mistake today when they go into something like AirDNA and they type in an address, and let's say it's a $500,000 purchase price, and the AirDNA rentalizer, which is an average of all the comparable properties, says it'll do $30,000 a year. Well, that's a terrible investment just looking at that. But let's say you start going through your comps. And so in Western North Carolina, I've got a perfect example for you. Let's say we're looking at a property near Asheville that has a view, right? A mountain view. That's pretty atypical, because if you're by Asheville's down in a valley, right? And so if you're close to the city, you're typically not getting a mountain view because you're not perched up, right? You're 30 minutes outside the city if you're perched up in the mountains. So then you're trading your view for location, right? If you can get both of those things, which is possible, but it's rare. And so let's say we're running a subject property. We're looking at a property, analyzing a property that we potentially want to buy, and it does have that view. Well, we don't then want to compare the potential revenue for that property with a bunch of properties that don't have the view.
Right.
Right. Or that, let's say it's another feature or amenity. Let's say they have less bedrooms, or the other houses are a lot more dated and ours is updated or will be updated, right? With the things we're going to do. Let's say those properties have very poor marketing, or they're managed by awful property managers in the area. Or does the owner use the property half the year, right? Do they come in summer, they leave in winter? All of these things matter. So these days you really have to dig into your comps a lot stronger to find real comparables. And so when you're doing any data analytics, they don't have a way to do that. AirDNA, STR Insights, Rank Breeze, Data Rabu, they don't have an algorithm that says, does this house have modern photos and modern furniture and all the features? Does it have that chic, cute, adorable vibe where you're like, yes, I'd love to go stay there? They don't have algorithms for that. So you can't just rely on data averages. Go through and truly find your actual comps, and that's going to lead you down the path to making an educated decision. Now, I'm not telling anybody to ignore the data, right? I'm not saying go with your gut feeling. I'm saying refine the data yourself, because there is no algorithm that can make that decision for you. It's not out there. I think like Data Rabu right now is struggling with this, because recently they rolled out, and I knew somebody would do this eventually, they rolled out for sale listings with an algorithm compared to what a property can do in short-term rental revenue. And their cap rates look incredibly low. For Asheville specifically, they're like 4 or 5%. Well, the problem is they don't know what they're looking for, right? The algorithm doesn't have a direction to go in. And so when I'm looking for property for a client, we go through every new listing every day. I literally look at every single listing on the MLS, over 4 MLSs.
Nice.
Up to 4 hours away from each other in Western North Carolina. And so when we're going through those properties, we're really looking like, let's say it's 400 listings, we might send 4 to investors. So we're only looking at truly 1% of the market might actually make a good short-term rental. And then typically, let's say I had 4 investors call about each of those properties. Typically, by the end of my conversations, after running comps, looking at the values and amenities, how much are they going to have to put in the house to furnish it? What values do the comps have? Like, if our house doesn't have a view and all the comps do have a view, you probably don't want to buy that. You're always going to remain in the lowest percentile of properties in that area. You can't recreate something like that, right? And so by the end of an underwriting conversation with a client, I might say no to 2 of those. So we're truly actually going 0.5% of the market here would actually make an incredible short-term rental, because these days you have to get to a decision point where you're saying, yes, this property could be in the 90th percentile of properties today, and it would be very hard to knock it out of that. Those are the only properties that we're looking at today. Nice. So does all of our market perform well for short-term rentals? No, and I don't think any market does. It's a slim segment that truly could be the best property in the area, and that's what we're looking for. That's what we're trying to sell today, is something that could be the best property in a geographic area.
Cool. Let's compare notes for a second here. So when I go on to AirDNA, I'm not going to use a comp unless it's been on the market in the last 365 days for at least 200, but ideally 250 days. I'm not going to use one that has less than 15 to 20 reviews. And I'm also not going to use one that has less than a 4.6 star rating. Do you use any of those metrics to decide if it's a good comp or not?
So, I guess it depends what metrics they actually have. I would say mine is a little bit more based on intuition than hard deadlines, right? Because especially right now, AirDNA released their report in October for up to the end of September. And they told us that 23% of properties on the market today were added just in the last 12 months, right? Yeah. So 25% of the inventory today is pretty much brand spanking new, right? Also, like when you're looking at the number of reviews, I think specifically, like a lot of times on AirDNA, it'll have an Airbnb, and there will be a VRBO listing floating around out there somewhere, but they're not actually hooked together.
Always connected, yeah.
Yeah, so they're not showing each other. So maybe that property did have a lot of Verbo bookings, and maybe they have a lot of reviews there. So here's my process step by step is I'll go into AirDNA, and then I don't know if any of you guys know this, and I don't think enough people know about this trick, but if anybody's using RankBreeze and you haven't installed the Google Chrome RankBreeze plugin, it's an incredible plugin, because what it does is it puts a button on every Airbnb listing, an overlaid button, and it says get listing revenue. And what it does is it runs the revenue per the calendar in real time based off of ADRs that it's been tracking forever, because RankBreeze tracks every listing and their ADRs, when they get booked, how long are they getting booked, and things like that. So my process is to go into AirDNA and then open up the Airbnb listings, and then I run RankBreeze. I want those two numbers to really look kind of similar, right? Okay, now I feel pretty confident because AirDNA is all based on past and historical, right? Historical data uploads and scraping. And then RankBreeze is looking 90 days into the future. So if I can start to get those two numbers to make sense together, then I feel pretty confident that I should use that as a comp, right? Okay. This revenue looks right. But then do the amenities compare? Do the values of the house compare? Is it more residential or is it a cabin, right? Like, what am I comparing to the comps? So that's kind of my process and how I go through. And then maybe I'll throw in some STR insights. And then lately I've been really liking what data.rabu is doing. They've made some huge improvements.
Very cool. I love that look into using RankBreeze as well, because I think that's super important. And by the way, RankBreeze and AirDNA, guys, if you're in the six-figure formula, you're already enjoying a really great discount, an exclusive discount. If you guys have not joined the six-figure formula, you need to, because we have exclusive discounts with AirDNA, RankBreeze, and 8 other partners that no one else is getting. And you can go check it out again, fearlesskyle.com/6FF. Tyler, I think one thing you said is incredibly important here, and it's the 90th percentile. We're doing the exact same thing. We are not looking at properties that are not in the top 10% right now, mainly for 2 reasons. One, we want to have the top performing properties, but number 2, we want to have a strong foundation in our business. And as we continue to see, just like what you said, AirDNA mentioning that 25% of properties are actually new in the last calendar year. There is more competition. There is more talks of lower bookings due to, recession, slow seasons, competition, all these things. And for that reason, that's why we're looking at that. I want to know for you, what reasons are you only taking on 90th percentile properties right now?
Yeah, so for me, I think increased competition and oversaturation is happening everywhere. One of the things that I like overall about Western North Carolina is that it is a hard area to get oversaturated. And the reason why is because we don't have just one anchor attraction here. So I'm thinking about places like Gatlinburg, right? Like, the closer you are to Dollywood, the better. Like, you have one big anchor attraction, and people really aren't going very far outside of that, right? They kind of want to be close to that. And so in Western North Carolina, we don't have one big anchor attraction. People come here to do outdoor activities. And what do you do when you're doing outdoor activities? Typically, you're driving around. You're doing one this way, one that way, hiking a waterfall here, biking down a mountain over there, right? And then one of the biggest attractions that people come to do here is to drive the Blue Ridge Parkway, right? So it's not super location dependent here. So for me, I sell from Bryson City all the way to Beach Mountain. Those towns are 4 hours away from each other. One is not competing with the other, right? Even from Beach Mountain to Banner Elk, they're really not competing with each other. So I find that it's hard for oversaturation to hit here as much, but I'm not burying my head under the pillow, right? And ignoring what is happening in the industry, which is oversaturation. So for me, that's why I'm looking at 90th percentile properties. Also, I mean, at the end of the day, they just bring in the most revenue, they just and it's hard to knock them off that pedestal. Like, what I like about looking at 90th percentile, in the past, everybody said, oh, we'll be in the top 20%. Well, that's fine. But if I'm in the 90th percentile, well, then I can afford more competition to come in, because at the end of the day, 80th percentile is fine because more competition is going to come over time. So today I want to be in the 90th percentile so that tomorrow if some really cool properties come in, if somebody does a really good job, and I do have more competition, that I'm still knocked down a little bit, but I'm still really at the end of the day in the top tier of revenue in that area. One thing that I really took away that was interesting from that AirDNA report was that here's what people are complaining about right now. Occupancy rates are down, right? That's what they're saying. You can't compare 2021 to 2022. 2021 was an anomaly. Right. We're not finding that here in Western North Carolina. We're up significantly year over year. And the reason why is because of that oversaturation figure. So here's what AirDNA said. They said, we're down in occupancy overall 1.8, 1.6%, something like that. What does that mean if there was 23% new supply? It actually means that year over year, travel demand, nights booked revenue is up almost over 20% year over year, right? Like the 23% in new listings minus the 1.6%. And so travel demand is up an insane amount. And that's why occupancy is only down 1.6% when there's 23% new listings. So what you have to look for is an area that did not grow by 23% of new listings. And what was so interesting is the day that that article came out, I wrote an email to my database and all my investors. And I was specifically looking at a house in Sugar Mountain for a client where there's a ski resort. And in fact, their rental inventory had gone from 550 to 500 year over year. So they went down 10% in inventory. We're up 20% in revenue. I'm like, ding, ding, ding. That's investable market right here. Yeah. Like this is a sign. So this is what I'm talking about when I'm saying use the data. Like, don't just go in AirDNA and like use the data that's there and look at the rentalizer. Oh, the average is off. I'm not going to invest in Western North Carolina or Kentucky or wherever else. Like you're going to really, really dig and find out what are the true drivers? What are the true metrics? If somebody's saying occupancy is down, well, what does that mean? If occupancy is down 10%, but revenue's up 30%, then you're still better off, right? Yeah. And so I think you really have to drill deep. And this is why we're creating at Savvy Realty an expansion network of real estate agents that are trained to look at all the data points, that are familiar with all the data, and especially familiar with their local market, with regulation, with where to go, the avatar of house, the avatar of client that you're looking for. So we're creating a real estate network of agents that are trained how to do this day in and day out, because what we found is there's all these gurus out there teaching how to manage short-term rentals. And that's awesome. I'm friends with a lot of them. I think they're all incredible. But what does it all start with? It all starts with the acquisition. And in real estate, who does that start with? It starts with the client and it starts with the agent. I think this is something that enough people don't think about. So that partner, your agent partner, it doesn't cost you any more to work with me than it does somebody who's never sold a house before, right? Costs the same amount of money. So at the end of the day, I think it's incredibly important to pick the right partner agent for yourself. And they can, in fact, help you determine markets. Sometimes I turn away clients and I say, this market's not right for you. You should go talk to Tony Bower in Kentucky or Aaron March in Myrtle Beach, right? And so I think what we're doing is really important for the industry.
That's really cool, man. So let's transition right now and talk about Savvy Real Estate, Savvy Realty, I should say. You guys are concentrated in a few different areas. Tell me about those areas, why you guys think those are the best areas to be investing in right now.
Yeah. So, well, I'll preface it and say there are other markets to invest in outside of ours, but if you're interested in ours, we're certainly the best agents to work with. And so that is kind of a founding principle for me. Is what I said was I only want to work with agents in markets that I would send my investors to. So I'm the same way here with investors. I tell people not to invest just as often as I tell them to invest. For me, the individual sale is not as important as my reputation. And I've got a notch in my belt that works incredibly well for me, which is I have never sold a short-term rental to a buyer that then came back and listed that property. Why would that be? Because they're all making money. They're all profitable, right? And so for me, that's an important notch in my belt that I never want to go away because it's the best sales pitch ever. And so I'll never hire an agent in a market that I wouldn't send an investor to, or I wouldn't even buy in myself, right? So I firmly believe in Myrtle Beach as a re-emerging beach market. The purchase prices there did not go 2 or 3 times like they did in Gulf Shores or Destin or Panama City Beach, these kind of viral, what I like to call the sexy markets, right? And so I think Myrtle Beach is really, really incredible. Also, historically, they've not got, I think one thing, in the current climate to talk about is getting wiped out by hurricanes. Myrtle Beach historically it has been left pretty unscathed. Does that change next year? Who knows? I don't control the weather, but I just know from the past, Florida keeps getting demolished every city every year, right? Like it's just going down the line and then it'll restart back up in New Orleans or something. And I hate to say that. I don't wish that on anybody, but I think you should look at investing at the beach with clear eyes, right? So big fan of Myrtle Beach. I think that that's an incredible market. We just closed a deal there for $950,000 with Erin March, my agent there in Myrtle Beach, and she's projecting to do about $250,000 a year. That's a really, really good investment.
Wow. Yeah, that's very good.
Yeah, that's great. And then, so we've got Tony Bower in the Bourbon Trail of Kentucky. And this was a market when I first started learning about Tony, I was more impressed with Tony than I was the market before I started learning about it. But as she's teaching me now, because she's our newest agent in Savvy Realty, she's officially onboarding next week. She is showing that $400,000 houses, you can bring in $100,000 a year in revenue with.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, really incredible. And so that's a really good market for maybe a first-time investor, somebody that does only have a $300,000 budget. $300,000 budget in Western North Carolina or Myrtle Beach is going to be really tough. It's going to be tough in Florida, right? It's going to be tough in Georgia and Tennessee. So the Bourbon Trail in Kentucky is a good place where a first-time investor might go. And you'll be partnered with literally the most incredible agent. Tony she's 10 times better than I am. She's so friendly. She goes to bat for her clients so well, and I'm so proud to be in business with.
I got to meet Tony at the STR Wealth Conference, and I can definitely reiterate that she was awesome.
She's incredible. She's such a likable person, and she cares so much. And it's not to say that I don't care. I care about my clients, but back to my culture index, like prefers data over people. Like I'm going to get you a real solid investment. Are we going to be best friends after that? Maybe, maybe not. With Tony, you will walk away a friend. I mean, you can't help it. She's just incredible.
That's awesome. Super cool. So Kentucky, the Carolinas, those are the 3 locations you guys are at.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I mean, I'm licensed in Georgia. I got licensed in Georgia to work in the Blue Ridge market late last year, early this year. And I was seeing too many investors complaining that they weren't getting bookings. They weren't even able to make their mortgage payments. I had people calling me to list their properties there. So I did a couple listings there and got some people out of sticky situations where they were losing money. Cash flow every month was negative. I historically have been called a Tennessee hater. I think as early as Monday, somebody called me a Tennessee and a Georgia hater. But I'm vocal in the markets to go to and where to stay away from. I don't want to see people get burned. So I'm licensed in Georgia. Here's what I'll say is I've heard from 3 or 4 people in the last couple of weeks that they're actually doing really, really well right now. Cool. So does that continue? I want to keep an eye out before I ever promote the area again, come back in or anything like that. I talked to a local agent there and he basically said, we need pricing to come back down where it should be, right? Got it. Pricing just went too crazy there and revenues just can't keep up with how fast pricing went.
Okay, cool. Tell me what Savvy Realty looks like in 5 years from now.
A short-term rental agent in every city in America.
Wow. Okay. So I hear 2 opportunities here for any of our listeners. One, if you are ready to invest in the right locations, we want to get you connected with Tyler and his team. So we'll give you a way to do that right now. But also, if you are a realtor and you're thinking to yourself, hey, I'd love to be a part of Savvy Realty and be one of those agents in my city, then it sounds like we need to get you connected with Tyler too. Does that sound about right, Tyler?
Oh yeah. Yeah. We've got a big push on it right now. We're actually about to roll out a course training agents how to sell short-term rentals. But of
Nice.
course, the number one agents will be in Savvy Realty. And I mean, the reasoning is simple, right? Like for real estate referrals, where are people going to send their investors? If we've got an agent in every market and they don't understand investing, they're going to send them to us. And vice versa, for the investor that does come into our ecosystem, you can expect the same experience from city to city. And I consistently hear, well, I don't know where to invest. And when I call an agent there, they don't know anything about short-term
Right.
rentals.
Right.
They've stayed in them twice, right? Like that's
Yeah.
their extent of their knowledge. So how could you feel comfortable about investing in a market like that if you don't have a local boots on the ground partner to work
Yep.
with? It would be really hard.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, Tyler. So how do they get in contact with you?
Yeah. So calendly.com/savvy-realty. It's SAVVY-realty, REALTY. You can book an intro call with myself, with Tony Bower or Aaron March, and we'll continue adding additional cities there. We're making a big push in January for new agents. If you're an agent as well, definitely look me up. You can look me up on Facebook. I do a lot of my business there, Tyler Kuhn, or just shoot me a text message. It's 828-620-2541. And that's me.
Awesome. We're going to have all of that in the show notes, whether you're on the podcast or the YouTube channel. So make sure you go and check that out. On the YouTube, just in the description, on the podcast, in the show notes. Tyler, you're the man. Thank you so much. And appreciate you helping our audience to conquer the world of short-term rentals.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime. Kyle, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it, man.
You got it. Okay. Let's keep it rolling.
Long, huh?
No, that was great. That's typically how long we go. So that's
Okay.
that's awesome. Okay, guys, you aren't posting any questions. Tyler just gave tons of value. We got no questions right now. There's got to be a question out there. Sometimes these guys are shy. So let's see if we can get them and encourage them to post some questions right now. Meanwhile, while we're waiting for them to think of something off the top of their head, I think one of the questions that I have is actually in response to a lot of people recently. You post these great stories of people, getting 50 properties in their first year, and all the haters come out and they say, well, that's not possible. You can't do that. There's no way to set up 50 properties. There's no way to get that many leads. Like, what would you say was the key to your success in getting 50 properties and 50 up and going in the last year?
Yeah, so that's definitely been a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's all about who you're surrounded with and who you work with. So, and a lot of it can be done with outsourcing. So like when we started, we had clients coming to us inevitably that are out-of-state investors, and they've got W-2 jobs. I've got clients that work at Facebook and at Google and at Workday, and all these startup companies and robotic surgeons and, CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. And these people don't have time to come set up their furniture, right, in their Airbnb. So as an ancillary service, we started offering that. And really what we're doing at the end of the day was just outsourcing it with our local resources. We can project manage the job. We stop by and make sure people are doing a good job. But, just going out there and saying, hey, we'll pay you $2,000. All the furniture will be there. Go set it all up. Set it up to make it look like a house. Put together all the IKEA furniture, right? And so outsourcing a lot of that helped a lot. But yeah, just having really loyal employees in-house that were integrated into the company from the beginning. I'm not the type of boss to ride people. I'm very we're in this together type person. And so I think it's really important nowadays. I was just having this talk with somebody else, which is the people that work with you, they opt in, right? We're not in the 80s anymore where people are in their careers for 30 years. People have options nowadays. And if they don't like working where they work, they will go somewhere else, right? And so before you can be successful, before you can work with your first client, your employees have to be happy. And you have to take that into account with every decision you make. Is this going to negatively impact my employees? Well, then we can't do it. We have to figure out a better way where it's a win-win. And so this is one reason I was excited to go back to Keller Williams Realty as my brokerage, was that's kind of how they've always operated. It's literally in their principles that every situation, every outcome should be able to have a win-win situation. So that's kind of how I look at life and anything that we do too.
You are speaking my language. Team is my passion in this business. we actually just turned away a really nice property today because the first thing I did when I got the lead was I said, hey team, it's about 20 minutes north of what we usually do. Can we take it on? And they said, it's going to take a lot of extra time, a lot of extra resources. We just don't feel it's the right fit. And, I have to listen to my team because like you said, if I start making decisions and I don't include my team, how heard do they feel? How loyal do they want to be to someone that just tells them to go out and take pecking orders? So
it's funny you say that because I've done that to my general, because I sell 4 hours in one direction or another, and we don't like if an investor comes to me and they want to self-manage, I'm a big proponent of self-management. So with the property management company, nobody's ever going to get a sales pitch from me. If they tell me from the beginning, I want to self-manage, they're going to forget I have a property management company because I never bring it up again. Really, it's kind of a catch-all at the end of the day for people that do want property management. And that's great for us and great for them. But it's funny that you say that because I sell in such a wide range of areas. My general manager, who I just brought on, and he got brought on like towards the tail end of 50, comes to me all the time and says, what did you stick me with? Like, how do we get from here to there and do it all? And I was like, just figure it out. So yeah,
that's funny.
We're spread a little bit thin, and that unfortunately does affect employees, but there's no way to fix that today. So what I tell them, grow 10 properties in that market and your life will be a lot easier.
Exactly.
More consistent cleaners, things like that. So go out there and grow it and your life will be easier too.
Yeah. Don't start in a new market unless you're going to be able to get enough properties and enough income set up to outsource the majority of the work. All right, Junior and Steve have questions. Thanks for posting your questions, guys. Junior says, what are your thoughts on Missouri? Have you ever invested there or looked at the numbers in Missouri?
I've never looked at the numbers over there. I know that Ryan Duffy owns a big brokerage over there. I've never worked with him. I've had a few conversations with him, so I can't speak too much to it, but he puts himself out there like I do. And so I tell everybody this: I can't afford to have a bad client or a client have a bad experience with investing in a property that I pitch them, because they be out there like tearing me a new one all the time in all the forums and stuff. So I have to imagine that he's a great guy to work with, because I've never seen anybody say anything negative about him or tear him down. So he might be a good contact to reach out to down there. That's Ryan Duffy. And I think he's at all over Lake of the Ozarks. He owns a management company from what I understand as well. And he's also an agent just like me.
Perfect.
That's all I know. I don't know anything else about that market.
Sounds good. All right, Junior, go check out Ryan Duffy. Steve says, is there ever a time to use more feelings when there's not much data?
This is a good question because winning properties, like if you can get into a market that really doesn't have any data, that doesn't have a top property, maybe they all suck, maybe they're all marketed bad or poorly, that's a tough one. I would say it really depends on the market. Here's one thing that I didn't mention on the rest of the podcast. One thing I like about Western North Carolina is that in this market, it's 90% primary home buyers. So if you compare this market to somewhere like Blue Ridge, Georgia, or Gatlinburg, nobody's ever going to rebuy that house as a primary home. Right? It's your only path to resale is through an investor. And so the investors control your life. And that's a problem because investors are fickle, right? Mm-hmm. And if revenues stop making sense, if purchase prices get too high, the only driver of purchase prices is revenue. So your pricing is very volatile. I would say if you're going to invest based on feelings, make sure you have a couple different exits where that you could take. If you could resell the house if there's a lot of primary home buyers, I wouldn't be super concerned about it. I'm a big fan, not just of short-term rental investing, but real estate investing in general. When I bought my first home, and this was before I was making any sort of money. I mean, not making very much money at all, but we were able to buy our first home for $300,000. And within 2 years, it was worth $400,000. And our net worth grew at an incredible rate, even without making any more money in our careers, right? And so I think overall, just real estate investing is worth it. So if you have a gut feeling, I would try to validate that as much as you could. But if you truly feel convicted by it, just make sure you have a couple different paths to exits, I guess would be my thing. I don't know. Some other people are more pessimistic about the current economy. I feel pretty good about it. I don't know. Everybody keeps saying recession's coming, but I think that's mostly going to be in the stock market. I don't see property values dropping a crazy amount. What everybody's talking about, and they're talking about property values dropping, is appreciation coming down. And it should, and it needs to. It needed to a while ago, and it needs to happen very quickly, because it's unsustainable for appreciation to remain at 20% a year. That's totally bananas. It should never have gotten that high. And I think that was a big problem. I think the Fed acted way too late in what they did. They should have never gone as low as they did. I don't think things were as bad as they were saying they were. They're printing all this free money at a time when people had more money in their bank accounts than ever before. You know, people still today have more savings than they've ever had before. And so, you know, I'm not a big pessimist on the economy. So you might get a different answer from other people, but I'm pretty bullish. I would say, like, don't spend your life savings on it, maybe, you know.
So Steve does say, hey, this would be more for arbitrage. I kind of feel like if it's going to be arbitrage, your multiple exit strategies now become more like, hey, not just Airbnb, but VRBO and furnish finders. And is there hospitals in the area? Can I make relationships with people that can bring me direct bookings? And also, like you said, hey, if I can just make it a long-term rental and still arbitrage it and make some money on the back end, then that's good. But also just managing, co-hosting, just like you said, now the owner takes on the risk rather than you, would kind of be my thought for Steve. Any additional thoughts on that?
No, I would say, you know, maybe there are ways that you can hedge yourself there a little bit. You know, maybe if it's a larger place and normally you'd have to spend 20,000 on furniture, maybe cut that back somehow for a little while just to test the market a little bit, so you're not all in, right? Maybe if you could do a shorter lease term or something like that with the seller or the landlord, and say, you know, I'll renew at a higher rate in 3 months, you know, let me test this out for 3 months. But if we make it successful, then I'll pay you a 20% bump in rent, you know, if you find that it's really worth it. There's creative things that you could do to hedge yourself there a little bit. So that might be something worth it.
I like it. Okay, guys, thanks for the Q&A. Tyler, thank you for the time, and really excited to release this on the podcast in a couple of weeks too. Go have a happy Thanksgiving. All right, so if you're ready to get connected with Tyler, all you have to do is go to the show notes. And if you're watching on YouTube, just click down below to get connected with Tyler. And you can start with the Savvy Real Estate team. And he's looking for more realtors as well. So if you're thinking to yourself, I would love to be on the Savvy Real Estate team, and you're in Maine or California or Seattle or wherever you're at across the entire country, they're looking for more realtors. And I would really encourage you to get connected with Tyler. That's going to do it here today for the Fearless Investor Podcast. We're helping you to conquer the world of Airbnb.